What if I told you? The internet might be losing its mind again. Or worse, what if this time, it isn't? Because right now, a storm is building around one name you probably never expected to trend like this, Julez. And somehow, this story is pulling in giants like 50 Cent and Diddy Combs. Yeah, you heard that right. Allegations, cryptic messages, whispers about hidden footage, and claims that something big is being covered up. But here's the real question. Is this a whistleblower exposing the industry, or just another viral spiral, fueled by fear, clout, and chaos? Because when 50 Cent starts dropping cryptic comments, you know people are going to pay attention. And the internet? Oh, the internet is already picking sides. Some are calling this the truth finally coming out. Others are calling it the wildest story of the year. But one thing is certain. This isn't just gossip anymore. This is turning into something much bigger. It always starts the same way. A random post. A strange message. A name nobody was paying attention to. Suddenly everywhere. And this time, that name is Julez. At first, people thought it was just another social media meltdown. You've seen it before, right? Someone goes online, starts posting cryptic things, talking about being watched, dropping hints that something big is coming. Most of the time, it fades out. People move on. Another trend replaces it. But not this time. Because this time, the posts didn't just stay weird. They started pulling in the biggest names in hip-hop. And that's when everything changed. Suddenly, Julez wasn't just another internet personality. She became the center of a storm. A storm filled with speculation, rumors, and questions that nobody could answer. But everyone wanted to. And then came the statements that really got people talking. Claims about hidden lifestyles. Private identities. Things being covered up. And yes, the internet did what it always does best. It took one vague statement and turned it into 1,000 theories. People began asking questions that were never even part of the original conversation. Is there something being hidden? Are public images just carefully controlled illusions? And why does it feel like every time someone starts talking, they suddenly go quiet? Now let's be clear about something. There is no confirmed evidence supporting any of these claims. But here's the problem. That hasn't stopped anyone. Because in today's world, you don't need proof to go viral. You just need a story that feels real enough. And this one feels real to a lot of people. So let's rewind for a second. Who exactly is Julez, and why is everyone suddenly acting like she knows something the rest of us don't? That's where things start to get complicated. Because depending on who you ask, you'll get a completely different answer. Some people say she's just chasing attention. Another name trying to break into relevance by attaching herself to controversy. Others say she's a whistleblower. Someone who's been around the industry long enough to see what goes on behind closed doors, and finally decided to speak up. And then there's the third group. The ones who don't fully believe her, but also don't feel comfortable ignoring her. Because of the way she talks. Because of the fear in her voice. Because of the timing of everything. And most importantly, because of the name she mentioned. We're talking about people like Diddy Combs. We're talking about Jay-Z. These are not small names. These are not people you casually bring into a conversation unless you're ready for the consequences. And that's exactly why this situation exploded the way it did. Because once those names entered the narrative, it stopped being just another internet moment. It became a potential industry story. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Julez didn't come out with a clean, structured explanation. There was no official statement. No organized timeline. No clear evidence presented. Instead, it was pieces. Fragments. Short posts. Emotional videos. Statements that sounded more like warnings than explanations. They're watching me. I don't have much time. People are not who they say they are. Now think about that for a second. If someone wanted attention, they'd usually go all in. Drop everything at once. Make it loud. Make it undeniable. But this felt different. This felt like someone saying just enough to get noticed, but not enough to fully explain anything. And that's exactly what made it dangerous. Because when information is incomplete, people fill in the gaps themselves. And that's exactly what the internet did. Within hours, theories started forming. People began connecting dots that may or may not even exist. Old interviews were being rewatched. Clips were being taken out of context. Moments that meant nothing before suddenly felt suspicious. And then, the speculation reached a whole new level. Conversations about hidden identities started trending. People began questioning everything they thought they knew about certain figures. Not because of facts, but because of suggestion. And that's the power of ambiguity. Now let's talk about the moment that really pushed this story over the edge. Because it wasn't just the posts. It wasn't just the theories. It was when one particular name entered the conversation in a more direct way. 50 Cent. Now if you know anything about 50 Cent, you know one thing. He doesn't stay quiet. Especially when something controversial is happening in the industry. He watches. He reacts. Sometimes directly. Sometimes indirectly. But he always says something. So when people started noticing his comments, even if they weren't direct responses, it added fuel to an already burning situation. A simple post. A subtle reaction. A comment that could be interpreted in multiple ways. That's all it took. Suddenly, people weren't just focused on Julez anymore. They were watching 50 Cent. Analyzing his words. Trying to figure out what he meant. Was he confirming something? Was he hinting at something? Or was he just doing what he always does, entertaining the chaos? No one knew. But that didn't stop the speculation. If anything, it made things worse. Because now the story had layers. It wasn't just about one person making claims. It was about how others were reacting to those claims. And in a situation like this, reactions can sometimes be louder than statements. Meanwhile, the media started circling. Not in a direct, headline-grabbing way, but in that careful, calculated tone. You know the one. Allegedly. Sources suggest. Unconfirmed reports. That language. The kind that keeps things legally safe, but still keeps the story alive. And once that happens, you know it's no longer just internet drama. It's something bigger. Because when media platforms start paying attention, it means one thing. People are watching. Closely. And that's exactly what was happening. Every post Julez made was being analyzed. Every word dissected. Every pause questioned. And at the same time, people started noticing something else. She wasn't backing down. Despite the attention. Despite the criticism. Despite the pressure. She kept going. Dropping hints. Making statements. Building a narrative that was becoming harder and harder to ignore. And that's when the question shifted. It was no longer just, is this true? It became something else. Why is she saying this? Because whether you believe her or not, one thing is clear. She believes something is happening. And that belief is what's driving everything. Now here's where things start to take a darker turn. Because as the attention grew, so did the reactions. Not just from the public, but from people within the industry. Some stayed silent. Completely silent. No comments. No reactions. Nothing. And sometimes, silence says more than words ever could. Others took a more careful approach. Dismissing the claims, but not too aggressively. Responding, but not directly. Keeping just enough distance to avoid being pulled too deep into the situation. And then there were those who leaned into it. Using the moment for content. Turning the controversy into entertainment. Because at the end of the day, attention is currency. And this story was generating a lot of it. But underneath all of that noise, one thing remained unclear. The truth. Because no matter how many posts were made, no matter how many theories were created, no matter how many reactions came in, there was still no solid evidence. No confirmed footage. No verified documents. Nothing that could take this from speculation to fact. And yet, The story kept growing. And that's exactly where things start to get complicated. Because when a story grows without evidence, it usually fades. But this one, it didn't. It evolved. It spread. It became something people couldn't ignore. And just when it felt like things couldn't get any bigger, that's when new claims started surfacing. Claims that would take this situation from controversial to something much deeper. And that's exactly where this story continues. The storm was already swirling. The initial posts and cryptic messages had drawn attention, but now the narrative began to expand into a full-blown spectacle of speculation, analysis, and online frenzy. People weren't just talking about Julez shuts, they were dissecting every single word, every video clip, every reaction, trying to find hidden meaning. The internet was alive with theories. Some were ridiculous, some plausible, and some downright obsessive. But obsession is what drives attention, and attention is exactly what this story was getting. It started with anonymous sources, or what the internet claimed were sources. Someone close to the situation told me, became the mantra of hundreds of posts, forums, and late-night YouTube commentary videos. And like a wildfire, these claims spread. Leaks of alleged messages, partial screenshots of texts, even photos taken out of context were being circulated. The narrative began to gain a life of its own, each rumor feeding the next. Was Julez really being watched? Did hidden footage exist? And why were figures like 50 Cent, Diddy, and Jay-Z suddenly becoming associated with this drama? No one had confirmation. No one had proof. And yet, everyone acted as if they did. The public reaction was electric. Fans of Julez were declaring her a truth teller, a brave voice exposing secrets that had long been hidden. Social media threads were exploding. Finally someone is speaking up, read one post. They've been hiding this forever, said another. On the flip side, critics questioned her motives, claiming she was manipulating attention for views and followers. Another clout chase, wrote one skeptic. Why now? Asked another. The tension between belief and doubt fueled more posts, more memes, more videos dissecting every angle. The alleged scope of the story only made things juicier. Rumors of lavish spending, secret meetings, and private gatherings at exclusive clubs began circulating. People claimed that figures in the industry wielded more control than anyone realized, able to silence critics and manipulate public perception. Again, none of this was verified, yet the internet treated it like breaking news. Anonymous sources were leaked discussing how certain people allegedly kept their private lives off the record, and whispers about hidden networks or systems of influence made everything feel urgent, almost cinematic. And then came the references to supposed private identities and secret aspects of people's lives. While this veered dangerously close to personal territory, the narrative framing always used words like rumor, speculation, or allegedly, creating enough ambiguity to keep viewers hooked without crossing into verifiable claims. The tension of what if it's true was the real engine driving the story. Every time Julez posted another cryptic statement, the narrative grew exponentially. Meanwhile, 50 Cent's involvement, or at least perceived involvement, added a new layer of drama. Observers scrutinized every post, comment, and reaction. Was he confirming rumors? Was he mocking them? Or was he merely entertaining the chaos? Every tiny gesture or cryptic comment became a headline. Memes were generated, reaction videos uploaded, all examining his tone, body language, and timing. The spectacle grew bigger than any original post or claim. And when you have someone of his stature casually adding fuel to the fire, the audience naturally assumed there was more beneath the surface. The media ecosystem caught on quickly. Hollywood-focused channels, social media news outlets, and independent bloggers all jumped into the fray. Phrases like unconfirmed reports, sources say, and anonymous insiders were repeated endlessly, creating an environment where the story could evolve unchecked. Even mainstream platforms, careful to avoid legal pitfalls, framed their coverage in ways that amplified intrigue. Rumors swirl around top hip-hop figures, or social media ignites over cryptic posts from Julez shuts. Every cautious headline only made audiences click faster, seeking the truth themselves. And while the coverage was intense, the drama didn't stop online. Comment sections were arenas of speculation, accusations, and hyperanalysis. Every video was dissected frame by frame. Every word typed by Julez became evidence for some, and proof of deception for others. Discussions about motives, whether she was a whistleblower, a clout chaser, or something in between, dominated forums. The online audience became a detective agency, a jury, and a theater all at once. The unfolding controversy even inspired spin-offs. YouTube channels dedicated entirely to theorizing about the situation, Twitter threads speculating minute details, and Instagram accounts reposting cryptic posts with added commentary. In a very short time, the story became its own ecosystem, with the original content as the catalyst and the audience as co-authors of the narrative. Amid all this, the question of credibility lingered. Nobody had proof. Nobody had confirmed sources. And yet, the weight of collective attention made the story feel undeniably real. This is a phenomenon that happens often with high-profile rumors. The more people engage, the more real it seems, even in the absence of concrete evidence. People treat shared belief as confirmation. And as attention spread globally, the scale of speculation reached levels that even seasoned media analysts had to acknowledge. Within this chaotic ecosystem, alleged insider accounts added color. A supposed insider might claim that certain figures were panicking behind closed doors, or that Julez had information that could change everything. These reports were never substantiated. They were intentionally vague, creating tension without evidence. But the effect was undeniable. Viewers were hooked, discussions multiplied, and the narrative grew faster than any single post could manage. And then came the alleged social implications. Some posts suggested that this story could affect industry relationships, partnerships, or even upcoming releases. Hypothetical consequences, album delays, contract negotiations, exclusive event bans were imagined and discussed. The line between speculation and reality blurred completely. Every new post reignited debates about potential fallout, creating an endless feedback loop. Public figures were suddenly forced into an arena they hadn't chosen. A cryptic post here, a muted comment there, and everyone assumed a stance. Fans, critics, and casual observers all contributed to shaping the narrative. Each interaction added layers to an already complex web of rumors. And for every denial, there was a new conspiracy theory. For every attempt at clarification, more questions arose. At the same time, Julez's behavior amplified the drama. She didn't clarify, she didn't deny, she didn't simplify. Every post, every video, every cryptic statement built the sense that something massive was unfolding. The audience became invested in the tension, the suspense, and the mystery. And as suspense built, so did engagement. The online discussion also sparked meta-commentary. Content creators began analyzing the phenomenon itself. Why rumors like this gain traction, how the internet reacts to controversy, and why partial information often spreads faster than verified news. This layer of analysis added legitimacy in the eyes of some viewers, while further entrenching the narrative for others. Meanwhile, media outlets kept up the pace. Each article carefully avoided presenting anything as fact while still keeping audiences intrigued. Headlines with words like alleged, rumored, and sources claimed dominated, driving curiosity while avoiding legal exposure. The story became a perfect storm of speculation, rumor, and viral amplification. And all the while, the central mystery remained. What does Julez Schutz really know? Is there actual footage? Are there hidden aspects of people's lives being revealed? Or is this an elaborate performance, designed to capture attention and dominate the conversation? Nobody could say for sure. And that uncertainty is exactly why the story kept growing. In the digital age, uncertainty drives clicks, engagement, and obsession. Every post from Julez, every cryptic message, every vague reference became a trigger. And audiences responded in kind, commenting, sharing, creating threads, and generating content faster than any official media source could report. The narrative now had multiple layers. The original posts, audience speculation, perceived involvement of major figures like 50 Cent, and the ongoing cycle of social media amplification. Each layer reinforced the next, making the story seem larger, more urgent, and more real. By now, It wasn't just a conversation. It was a phenomenon. People weren't just watching. They were participating. They were co-creating the story. And in doing so, the narrative became unstoppable, evolving beyond the original posts into something that felt entirely organic yet undeniably viral. As engagement grew, so did the scope of imagination. Fans theorized about potential motivations, power dynamics, and hidden alliances. Each new theory was dissected and debated. Every small detail became a potential clue. And while there was no proof to any of it, the narrative momentum carried it forward as if truth itself were embedded in speculation. The phenomenon even spilled into mainstream awareness. Articles discussing the rumors and speculation further validated the story in the public eye. And once that happens, the line between verified news and collective imagination begins to blur, creating an echo chamber where engagement becomes the ultimate measure of reality. In this environment, the drama reached its peak tension point. The stakes seemed high, not just for Julez, but for the figures she referenced, the media covering it, and the audiences consuming it. Every post, every comment, every theory added another piece to a narrative that had no clear beginning and no verifiable end. The story had grown from a few cryptic social media posts into an international phenomenon, driven entirely by speculation, social amplification, and the human fascination with secrets, power, and the possibility of hidden truths. The story had grown into a digital wildfire. Rumors, cryptic messages, and public speculation had transformed a few social media posts into what felt like an international phenomenon. By now, audiences weren't just watching, they were fully invested. They were analyzing, theorizing, debating, and, in many ways, co-authoring the narrative. But as we move into the third part, the real question becomes, what happens when speculation collides with perceived consequence? Suddenly, the stakes felt higher. Fans and critics alike began discussing potential repercussions, whether real or imagined. Social media threads speculated on industry fallout, record deals at risk, partnerships under strain, and reputations hanging by a thread. Each comment, each rumor, amplified tension. Headlines, carefully framed with alleged and sources claim, added a veneer of legitimacy, and audiences reacted as if these were breaking developments. The alleged consequences weren't minor either. Some speculated about cancelled events, postponed album releases, and financial implications for the record labels involved. The narrative suggested that the ripple effects of Julez's statements could impact not just her own trajectory, but the careers and projects of the industry giants she referenced. It was the kind of high-stakes drama that captures attention in an era obsessed with scandal. Meanwhile, media coverage expanded. YouTube commentary channels, social media influencers, and entertainment news platforms all jumped into the fray. Analysis videos dissected Julez's tone, body language, and timing. Every subtle expression was scrutinized. Was she nervous? Defiant? Fearful? Each theory added another layer to the evolving story. And as analysts debated her motives, audiences watched, commented, and shared, increasing engagement exponentially. At the same time, the involvement of 50 Cent continued to stir interest. His cryptic comments fueled speculation, whether intentional or not. Some viewers read his posts as confirmation. Others interpreted them as subtle warning or advice. And while nothing he said provided direct evidence, the fact that someone of his influence had responded, however subtly, made the story feel more credible in the eyes of the audience. Public reaction now had multiple dimensions. Supporters of Julez hailed her as courageous, standing up against powerful figures in the industry. Detractors dismissed her as seeking attention, accusing her of manipulating social media algorithms and public perception for clout. And in the middle, a third group of observers remained unsure, torn between skepticism and intrigue. This triangle of reaction, support, criticism, uncertainty, created a self-sustaining cycle where every new post reignited discussion, speculation, and analysis. One of the most fascinating aspects of the story was how online communities contributed to its evolution. Reddit threads, Twitter threads, and YouTube comment sections became arenas for debate. Users claimed inside information, offered detailed theories, and presented screenshots that were often partial or out of context. Even when evidence was lacking, the act of sharing, commenting, and speculating created the illusion of investigation, making the story feel more authentic. As part of this digital ecosystem, memes and reaction videos flourished. Every cryptic statement by Julez became a meme template. Every ambiguous social media post became fodder for reaction compilations. This layer of cultural commentary amplified engagement further. Even those uninterested in the original claims were drawn in by humor, satire, and the performative nature of online speculation. Meanwhile, the discussion of hidden networks, secret systems, and alleged private footage persisted, carefully framed in language emphasizing uncertainty. Every statement was qualified with allegedly, rumor suggests, or sources claim. This careful phrasing allowed content creators to maintain a sense of legitimacy while avoiding concrete claims that could be legally or ethically problematic. Yet, the suspense and drama remained fully intact. Audiences were left hanging on every new post, waiting for confirmation, explanation, or denial. By now, the narrative had taken on multiple dimensions. It was a story about Julez Schutz. It was about major industry figures. It was about the audience's collective imagination, amplified by social media. And it was about the power of ambiguity, the ability of incomplete information to generate drama, intrigue, and viral attention. Each layer fed the others, creating a feedback loop that made the story feel larger than life. Speculation about potential industry consequences continued to flourish. Some posts imagined hypothetical resignations, probes, and internal investigations. Others suggested financial crises or damaged reputations for those allegedly involved. Even if these scenarios were purely imagined, the possibility alone created tension. And in a climate where audiences crave high-stakes drama, tension is more compelling than evidence. The story also highlighted the interplay between perception and engagement. In a situation like this, the audience essentially becomes part of the narrative. Their reactions, shares, and posts help define the story's trajectory. In a sense, the viral spread of speculation and rumor becomes a self-fulfilling phenomenon. The more attention it gets, the more real it feels, regardless of verifiable truth. Meanwhile, Julez's strategy, or perceived strategy, continued to sustain interest. By posting cryptic messages, maintaining ambiguity, and selectively sharing details, she created an environment where curiosity could thrive. Every incomplete statement became a catalyst for discussion. Every pause became a point of analysis. And every reaction from other figures, whether subtle or overt, became part of a larger, unfolding narrative. This cycle of speculation, reaction, and amplification reached a point where it transcended the original posts. It became a phenomenon in its own right. Audiences were no longer responding only to Julez's messages. They were responding to the ecosystem of attention, engagement, and drama that had emerged around her. In effect, the story created itself through collective fascination, curiosity, and speculation. The focus shifts toward hypothetical consequences and the broader cultural impact. Discussions emerged about the implications for transparency, public perception, and the balance of power in the entertainment industry. Could cryptic posts and viral rumors influence contracts, partnerships, or careers? Were audiences beginning to shape narratives that could affect real-world outcomes? And even if no verified evidence existed, the sheer scale of engagement made the story impossible to ignore. At the same time, debates over motive intensified. Was Julez a whistleblower? Was she performing for attention? Or was she navigating a complex mix of personal and professional pressures, using social media as a platform to assert control over her narrative? Audiences speculated endlessly, but the questions themselves drove continued attention. Meanwhile, mainstream media coverage continued cautiously. Headlines emphasized uncertainty, using terms like alleged and sources say while summarizing the frenzy. Yet even cautious coverage contributed to momentum, because audiences equated media attention with legitimacy. The story became a perfect case study in how rumors, speculation, and social amplification can generate the perception of truth. The climax of this part of the narrative revolves around the enduring tension between belief and doubt. For every viewer convinced of Julez's credibility, there was another doubting her motives. For every fan interpreting 50 Cent's comments as confirmation, another read them as sarcasm, deflection, or irrelevance. This duality, belief versus skepticism, sustained engagement, keeping the story alive and fluid. And finally, the story highlights a key principle. In the age of viral media, the power of ambiguity is immense. Incomplete information, cryptic posts,